Welcome to Old Guy Tech,
the OGT.TV recording studio.
Technology for the rest of us.
And hello everybody, and once again thank you for watching Opinion versus Opinion on News 44 and Old Guy Tech TV. I'm Rob Charney and he's John Majestic behind my back there. And of course our forever producer down in the corner, butting in when he feels like it, is Jonathan Charney. He's with us too. So thank you for watching, really appreciate it. I can't thank everybody enough for joining in and watching. I'm going to beg right off the beginning, hit that donation button, would you? You'd like to see us on the air for another year. We really need some help. So don't much for the beg. Second, item 2, we need you to, and I don't know what I did with Jonathan. There it is. Oh, okay, I need you to call in. This is supposed to be a call-in show, and our phone number is 530-621-1210. 530-621-1210, and make sure when you call in, that you turn your speakers off of your computer, because there's a delay, just like on the regular television shows, radio shows. You always have to turn those off. So please, 530-621-1210, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. So, John, I'm going to start us off this evening with a fact check. And one of the things that is happening in the gun world, the ammunition world, of course, is that just about any rumor that goes out there, people are willing to believe. And one of them was what we talked about last week, was that the military was taking their brass, spent brass used from all the ammunition, and were grinding it up and sending it to China. So it turns out that that wasn't so much wrong, but they got so much heat so quickly, that was turned over really quick. So it had to do with a Georgia ammunition supplier who was buying literally tonnage of brass, and some yaho in the military decided that they were going to indeed not sell that bulk brass to this company, and we're going to shred it up and send it to China. And then what actually happened was they found out that they were going to have to spend money to grind the brass up and then send it to China and get paid less than they would by just shipping the raw material to the different reloading manufacturers. And believe it or not, our government said that doesn't make any sense, so they are not doing it. So folks, if you're along, they're passing along the whole idea that this poor Georgia Ammunition Company is not able to get their bulk brass. That is not true. They are, and they are producing ammunition as quickly as they can, and they still do get their brass from the military. So how's that for a fact check?
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the other precious metals at the moment. There are, projects that stopped in 2008 or years after, when we deeply recessed, a racetrack in Bakersfield, a brand new racetrack. They stopped construction. They ran out of money.
Yeah.
Well, by the time the new guys got in, every piece of copper wire
gone,
and any piece of valuable metal had
stripped,
been removed. Yeah.
Yeah. I like the ones where the Darwinism comes in. You know, the guys that take the copper wire on hot lines. There's been numerous people that have gone up in a puff of smoke trying to steal that copper. Not smart enough to learn.
It's a heck of a conductor. I guess that's why they want it.
It's really great. I mean, so you guys out there stealing that copper, keep hitting those hotlines, will you? I mean, it kind of it'll keep that from happening. But yes, with all those metals, copper, brass, silver, we won't even talk about gold, but with all those situations,
Gold's come down in what? It's come down 13-14%.
Yeah, gold is taking a big drop down, and
inflation is coming.
Yeah, well, we're going to have inflation. I mean that you can only hold that off so long, and we're going to see the increase in interest rates. They're slightly going up, and Bernanke is on his way out, and it will be interesting to see where we go with interest rates.
Who do you put in?
That's a good question.
Whose name's looming on the horizon to replace Bernanke?
You know,
and Bernanke is no big tight buddy with me.
Yeah, I don't think he is with anybody. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, I don't have a name to give you. I don't know. There were rumors, and I don't know her name, unfortunately, but there was a rumor that there was a woman they were looking at who apparently is very well known in the financial world and supposedly has every credit that you need to have to be in that kind of position, but I haven't heard anything since. So.
Well, I just don't know if I want I love you women. I just don't know I want women in all the monetary positions, the International Monetary Fund, the U.S. Federal Reserve. And I'm not sure about, I think both of which are private corporations and have no really national ties to anybody or anything.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a mandate situation or literally the best person for the job, and which it should be. I don't particularly care race, creed, color, whatever, as long as it's the best person for the job.
And actually, Greenspan was around there for so long, and in the final analysis, I guess he was as good as any, but he was contributory to what did happen in 2008.
Yeah.
He didn't keep tabs on some things.
Yeah, there were some things that slipped by, I don't know with Greenspan. I don't know if it was he chose to pay attention to certain areas and not to others, or really what it was.
Well, Greenspan was supremely powerful. He was, I think, without question, the most powerful head of the Fed there ever has been, or maybe ever will be.
Right.
Good, bad, or different.
I had an economics teacher once say that never mind the president, the strongest, most powerful man is the one in charge of the Fed. That there's nobody in the United States that has as much power as he does.
He controls money supply.
Yeah.
He is a regulator in league with the banks. I mean, you got to remember that he does not work for us. He works, you're talking to an econ teacher, he works for them. They pay his salary. The big banking titans of in the 30s, when the Federal Reserve was organized under FDR, it was basically their money to have a quote-unquote neutral control loans, interbank, etc.
Right. Well, in theory, it works, and it's going to be a very interesting next. I'll go far as 10 years. We'll give them 10 years. It's going to be a very interesting next 10 years, financially, institutionally, government-wise, and like you hit on, inflation. Are we going to be able to hold that in check? I don't know. We're already seeing, we're tied into things like fuel. Fuel's going up, and I don't think, usually it doesn't go down much, but it looks like now, due to refinery issues or lack thereof, fuel prices.
And exportation of gas.
And exportation
of petroleum products. We are exporting the largest amount of petroleum products that we've exported in a very long time.
Yes, which is interesting. I mean, we have the ability to produce more than we actually consume, if we want to go to that extent. But that's one of those questions.
Here's a fact that you can check if you want to.
Yeah.
But oil production in Kern County for Chevron provides enough money to operate all the rest of Chevron worldwide.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, it generally
So you got to say to yourself, it's got to be a refinery problem, because if there's that kind of supply, just where I live in California,
right.
and and that's not taking into account Texas or Louisiana,
right,
or Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's. And don't forget, we're still looking at a possible pipeline from Canada all the way down to Texas.
Well, and the amount of oil that we are not tapping and not using in Alaska is frightening. Any real Alaskan will tell you that they're, Prudhoe Bay, or I forget the name. I mean, we put a cap on it. We got so much oil up there, it's scary.
Yeah.
The question, the problem is that corporations, and here we go off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Corporations who are people are not patriots. They may be people, but they're not very patriotic.
It's all the bottom line, isn't it? It seems like, it's how much.
It's all about. It's not about. Well, let's make sure we've got enough, and then we'll take our surplus. No, it's profit maximization at every opportunity in every case, and
Right. Well, when you have shareholders that you have to answer to, and you have dividends that have to be paid, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. They go to
But again,
extremes.
we hit that line that came up previous election. Entity, individual. Is an entity a human, an individual being, and and since legally they are at the moment, they are beings with very different wants, needs, and desires.
Right.
I mean, a corporation doesn't have to put 3 kids through college. But if it has equal societal and financial standing, then you do have the parallel universe of beings that have different wants and needs.
Yeah.
I mean, we all want to be rich, but at the end of the day, if you've got a family, you just want enough to provide and have a good family life and to take care of yours.
It still comes down, when you talk about the oil and you talk about the amount of oil that we're not pumping, we've capped an awful lot of wells. We're sitting on all kinds of oil, and yet we're still importing a huge amount of what's going into our refineries here.
Right.
You do have to sit back and wonder a little bit of, what's going on here? And it's almost like it's one of those topics that, hey, you don't want to talk about that. I mean, we don't want to piss off the Saudis, or they'll cut off our, we'll have an oil embargo again like we did in the 70s, and we remember that.
Theoretically, we definitely don't have the refinery for it, but we have the capacity to replace it.
Yeah.
But the issue is here, where that comes into, is we can't afford at this point to let our oil go other places that we have no control over. So we purchase it, so we still use more oil than everybody else put together, so that we have control of the market by buying.
Right.
Because we could, in theory, we could destroy the price by flooding the market with what we've got.
Exactly.
And of course, the Middle Eastern cartels do exactly that. They agree on how much oil, kind of like De Beers, and how many diamonds you're going to get.
It's all fixed.
They agree on how much oil everybody's going to get and how much they're going to distribute.
Right. Exactly.
Because they don't get an oil depletion allowance.
No, of course not.
So it's not, and obviously it is by no means viable, nor would it ever happen, because, I mean, now you're talking about, perfect economies, that you would just let the supply be supplied and let demand and supply find the equilibrium price. Since,
Wow.
now I can start teaching advanced microeconomics.
Wow. How do you, John?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Supply and demand? You got to be kidding. Well, so anyway, we discussed the oil, and that'll be ongoing. We could probably discuss it every week.
I revert to my great spaghetti monster, better known as Tower of Power. Yeah. There's only so much oil in the ground.
Yeah.
Just Google that up. It's a very Oakland point of view on oil.
On oil, yeah.
And I got to tell you that it has been unique being where I am at the moment, in light of the Trayvon Martin thing over the weekend.
Right. Well, it is, and that brings up a good question. And did you actually see any outward protests or demonstrations?
Oh, yeah.
Did you?
Last night, yeah.
Yeah.
There are people in the street. It was all peaceful.
Yeah, okay.
There are people in the street.
Thank God it was peaceful.
Why shouldn't it be? I mean, it's just the point that they are making. from the Rush Limbaugh point of view is they're a bunch of racists against the white people. But I've written papers on it and I've done research on it, and just like in the days of slavery, if a black man was found not indentured to someone and out and about, he had to show his papers because he was assumed to be an escaped slave. Well, there were also white slaves, and if a white slave was found in amongst the public, he would assume to be a free man until somebody said, no, he's my slave.
Well,
good, Jonathan.
I was going to say, don't forget, George Zimmerman is not a white guy. He's Hispanic.
No, I'm not saying, and that makes it even more exercised, he being a brown guy, a Hispanic guy. It just is more, color on color violence. I think televising the trial in many ways was a disservice. I think that we sometimes defeat the judicial system. I mean, as much as that we have a right to watch, the law is not always something that everybody understands.
That's true, but I took the opposite views, having watched almost the entire trial. And,
I did too.
And I thought it was a great thing, and I thought it was very interesting to see the interaction. And you know what? I wanted to study the Florida jury system and exactly how that works. It was a very interesting jury of 6, and then they choose all women, and that's the only thing I didn't get to watch is the jury selection and how it takes place in Florida, because obviously it's quite different here in California. It's a whole different setup.
It's drama here in California.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not 6 people either. I mean, it's 12. So
we impanel 12 for everything.
Yeah.
It's not on the there are some counties, etc., that due to numbers don't impanel 12. But if it goes to a superior court, it's a 12-person jury.
Yeah, there are some civil things that are done with less numbers.
I have a question about protesting from a couple of people who were alive during the 60s. A good friend of mine lives in L.A. and was driving the 10, and protesters were marching across the 10, and apparently, would that have happened? Were people smart enough back then to realize that crossing a freeway is not exactly a smart thing?
Well, at the same time, no, we never did that. And yes, the 10 did exist, but it was rather new.
It was.
I have both. I mean, it didn't open until what? Sometime at our time at Samohai, it opened.
Yeah.
And ran all the way to the beach. I have a polished nut from one of the signs from a Brazil. Shh, they're going to come to get me.
They want that nut back.
But it was. We had areas. We were so organized. And marching on the 10 would be, that's very organized. They want to get their soundbite.
They want to get
We
ran
weren't
over.
so worried about the soundbite. In other words, media got to remember that the Vietnam War was brought to an end by Walter Cronkite. Black and white TV. Vietnam War was the last televised war there's ever going to be, because they figured out, bad idea. Movies that they had edited and put together out of World War II, those were great. But actually televising a war, basically live in the leader on the news every night, bad idea.
Yeah, it was
never happened
every
again.
night led with the amount of dead on the news, and we were organized. I went to so many protests like you did, John. And they were for the most part very peaceful. But it was a way to get the message out, and we did our job. And I'm glad to hear that the Trayvon Martin situation where you're at right now, that they're out there giving their point of view. And you know what? I have no problem with them being there.
It's absolutely American.
Yeah.
I may not agree with you all the time, but I will defend your right to protest.
Absolutely. And I think that's great. And I'm very, very happy to hear that they went out, they protest, they got their point across, and they didn't burn down buildings and break windshields and break into stores and loot them, like unfortunately happens too often. So,
well, it did happen in Oakland one evening. There was a little of that in L.A. But
it was very small.
Could that be blamed on the Trayvon Martin, or is that just a normal thing?
That's a cause and effect.
Yeah, well,
they had opportunity to do it.
you got to have it. Yeah, well, you got to have some reason to go out and do it, but they want to do it. You always have the knuckleheads that want to go out and cause problems just so they can cause problems. I mean, what the Lakers won the championships and they burnt down buildings and destroyed vehicles.
Well,
and
LA's never been that bad. I mean, yeah, we've had some mischief. San Francisco, Detroit have been some pretty, and it's a reason to let off, and to a certain extent, I think police forces will let it go on because it's a way of letting off steam in a very steamy community.
Right. And it's like a pressure cooker. If you take a little bit of that pressure off of it, a little at a time, it'll eventually open up and be fine instead of trying to open the whole thing at once.
Well, the unique thing for me was that in 1965, during the initial Watts riots,
Right.
I was in Colorado. I was on the farm in Colorado. I was not physically in Los Angeles. And in the Rodney King riots, I was living in Bakersfield.
Right.
So a completely different point of view. When you watched it in Bakersfield, they told you how many National Guard and how many troops from Bakersfield were in L.A. kicking butt.
Yeah, interesting.
There's a completely different spin. But no, we were really organized, Jonathan. We had a purpose. We had a goal. I think I told you the story that I actually found out when I returned to college, something when I was the commissioner of activities at Santa Monica College, the initial Indian takeover of Alcatraz, the Indians kind of fell apart and it became the activists, Native American activists from UCLA who finally went and bolstered up and organized the takeover of Alcatraz. And I realized I end up raising money, food, and all that kinds because, UCLA, Santa Monica College, Commissioner of Activities, let's do a thing to raise some, okay? And some 35 years later, I realized that I'm involved and I know the people that I'm reading about in the books that I dealt with in West LA. So that's how organized we were.
Well, I guess part of it for me, and I'll be honest, I'm not a giant fan of protesting because mainly it seems to bring out the worst type of people. But I don't understand crossing a freeway, purposely blocking traffic when cars, in theory, are going 65 miles an hour.
Just something to do. I mean, right, it's not...
We would have done it if we thought of it.
Yeah, you don't have to understand it, Jonathan.
Well, here's my question. It's not protesting. It's assisted suicide.
Well, that's their problem, isn't it?
It's called civil disobedience.
By getting
and it's part of protesting.
Sure.
By getting hit by a car, that's protesting.
Yeah.
Did anybody get hit by a car?
No, but my friend really wanted to.
Yeah, but the point was, they got their point across. And I hadn't heard the news on them shutting down the 10, but whatever.
There were a few hundred, and they finally, they skirted him off pretty quick, because that's what the LA police chief said. Look, he backs up. I'm down with people protesting. I want them to do that. I want them to exercise that right. That is their right. Now, the only issue is you don't have the right to interfere in the operation of the freeways, the city, and the rest of the people that do or don't. Or
you don't impede the flow of traffic and individuals' rights to go where they want to go.
Plus, Jonathan, one of the things that you don't understand is that in the 60s and the 70s, we were the majority. Us.
Right.
That mass, unwashed, long-haired, non-underwear wearing, free love, dope smoking hippie bunch. We're the majority, and we're this, and we are the stone around your neck now, when it comes to Social Security and everything else. But we were the majority, so we had a certain level of arrogance, because we were the baby boomers. We were the most Americans and quote unquote Americans, not citizens that came in, but the largest group of Americans to organize for a protest.
I definitely see that. I mean, you hated the man, and now you are the man. I just find it...
Dude, don't trust anybody over 30. I look back on it now, man. Dude, man, I've got, I've got twice times
Well,
in credibility.
If we thought we were going to live this long, we would have taken better care of ourselves.
Or, taking 3 hits instead of 2. I don't mean that for the young people.
They'll get it.
We heard stories about what happened to people.
Yeah, we don't have any firsthand knowledge. But since we're talking about the Trayvon Martin Zimmerman situation here, I got a bit of a problem with our Attorney General. Again, a problem. Imagine that. Good old Eric
problem that you have with him. Go ahead and finish it.
Well, all right, let me finish it.
I'm as you well know, I'm no huge fan of Eric Holder.
Well, of course, so he's busily trying to figure out and to decide whether to file federal charges on this situation.
He's not going to.
So he repeated his pledge for a full investigation of Martin's death in an aftermath of Zimmerman's acquittal on murder and manslaughter charges, by the way, folks, saying that the Justice Department will continue to act in a manner that is consistent with the facts and the law. We will not be afraid. What?
Well...
Well, what are you going to be afraid of, yet?
Are these from Holder's lips to the media to your ears?
These are from Holder's lips. That's a quote.
Well, you obviously didn't see the speech he gave at the NAACP convention yesterday, because you'd really be upset.
Yeah, well, actually, you're right. I didn't watch it live, but I saw the report out on it. And
because he's an African American.
Fine, I understand that, but this guy tends to step into it in every which way but loose, and I still don't quite understand how he has his job, other than he must have one hell of a file on Obama. And
it's because he's a glad-hatting yes man. Obama says do this, and he says, okay.
Well, I think in the next 4 years you're going to find that not to be true. Did I lose you completely?
No, we hear you. What do you mean? What's not to be true?
That he's not a glad-handing yes man to Obama. I think he's definitely very much Obama. I think that he is Obama's attorney, and based on what he said at the NAACP yesterday, I liked him more than yesterday at NAACP than I've liked him in all the rest of the time that he's been in with Obama. Somebody's got to be a somebody, As I've said many times before, I didn't like George W. Bush, but I sure as all hell knew what he was going to do, how he was going to do it, and who he was going to do it to. And he pretty much did what he said he was going to do.
Right.
Outside of immigration reform.
Well, this whole situation that he's got. Yeah, it is. I don't even want to get into immigration at this conversation level, but so what we have is Florida has a stand your ground law, and for those of you out there, there's 30 states that actually have this. California not being one, by the way.
No.
We do have a castle doctrine in California,
right?
But that only applies to within your home.
The house after you shoot.
That's right. But the stand your ground basically means that you do not have to be forced to flee the scene. You can stand your ground and fight back, okay, under personal protection. Interesting enough, this whole case that was not even brought up. They had so much evidence that they didn't even need to bring up that. I thought was very interesting.
They also had a hearing prior to it that they were not going to base their case on stand your ground.
Yeah, except that the judge chose to add stand your ground as part of her admonition to the jury. Yeah, exactly. So, so she threw it in there. She didn't have to. It was never needed in by any of the attorneys. But yet she chose to put that into the jury instructions.
Well, so. I agree. I mean, the trial was not well run on any level, and the witnesses were. The Chinese Inquisitor reminded me of the O.J. trial.
Yeah.
Bottom line is this: stand your ground, not stand your ground. It's a terrible thing that a 17-year-old young man was shot. It was, however it happened.
Absolutely, it's a tragedy.
Whoever attacked whoever, if Trayvon attacked, his name always escapes me because he doesn't look what his name does. So there's no hard association.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is this: I understand stand your ground. I resonate, and I hate to be a broken record, but I find over time it is a very effective technique. We just need to be more civil to one another. I mean, flat out. George Zimmerman has a gun is an issue. As it can and could be, and you teach a concealed weapons class, so and you're looking when you're teaching people and evaluating. I don't know, maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know that you do, but if somebody's really weird, you're going to go, that person is really weird.
Well, my training is simply this: remove yourself from the situation. Okay, I tell people to go the other way. Using a gun is the last resort, period. Right. And that's the way I teach my courses.
In the Trayvon Martin situation, it looks like, and the jury decided that it was the last resort.
Exactly.
Some of it,
however,
I have seen so many trials. I have seen so much evidence. I've seen so much eyewitness that it's usually the worst evidence you could ever get in the world. And this is what I mean about, as much as I think that we shouldn't be kept out of the court, at the same time, television is not always complementary to the legal system.
Right.
And end of what I was saying is, I think that George Zimmerman had a hard-on or had an issue, right or wrong. Well, I think that he did stereotype. I think we all stereotype. I think it's something that is human. It's something inbred. I think that you have to work very hard with yourself to not stereotype and assume, to not be defensive or, it's just a fact.
I understand that, but interesting enough, I don't think he really did do the profile, because when he was on the call with the 911 operator, when she asked him, is he white or black, and his statement was, well, I think he's black.
Well, but then
there wasn't any profiling initially in the evidence,
except that you have the statement that the prosecutor opened the trial with those blankety blanks always get away with it,
right?
And it was a quote from George Zimmerman.
Right.
So in one statement, yes, and in another statement, no. Again, I'm not George Zimmerman. I wasn't there.
Right.
I hate to take that defense, but I don't know. And I saw a not well-presented legal case that I think I could have probably done a better job on.
The prosecutors obviously were not as sharp as they should have been, and don't we have a history of that? I mean, look at the O.J. trial, same situation.
And then Marsha Clark is one of the colored people for MSNBC, and I'm going, she didn't win.
No.
But
she does have experience with losing, so maybe she is a good one to listen to.
A lot of prosecutors do.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is this, and I still come back to, hey man, Rodney King, I don't want to go there, but the thing is, we just have to be nicer to one another. And it comes from both ways. I mean, I could find myself out in 2 miles from here, and if I wasn't pretty confident in who I am and what I know, I could feel that my life might be in danger.
Right. Well,
but as somebody said, black on black, brown on brown, yellow on yellow. Guess what? Each ethnicity probably kills, and I don't know the numbers, but we probably kill individually as to each one of our ethnic groups. We kill more of our own ethnic group than anybody else does.
Yeah, that's unfortunately a very true fact.
That's who you hang out with. So if that's gonna, if something's gonna precipitate into violence, it's gonna be with the people around you.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna have that much anger with somebody that you want to take their life.
Right.
It's a pretty high level of anger.
That is a very high level of anger. And the whole thing that disappoints me about this whole situation takes place. I'm sorry for the young man's death. However, every picture we had of this guy, Trayvon, was his 14-year-old picture. He was 17. He was a lot different in his looks as older, but you never saw that portrayed. But here we have a situation that could have easily been ended the proper way. All Zimmerman had to do is get in his car and leave. He made his report. He called 911. They told him stay put. He should have either stayed put or got the hell out of Dodge. And that's what I treat in my classes. Now, the question is, we have a time frame in there that didn't seem that they didn't seem to bring up into the trial about from the time he was on the phone with the 911 operator, hung up, and the situation, did he approach Trayvon, go and hunt him down himself, or did Trayvon come to him when he saw him standing out of the car? That part, as far as I know, was never figured out, and it wasn't brought out. So we have a situation where we really don't know, and I think that was what the jury faced, is what really happened here. And it's very difficult to figure it out. We have a horrible situation and a young man losing his life, and another man who's ruined his life for the rest of it. I mean, he will never be the same. You know that the family's going to sue him. He's going to be in court basically for the rest of his life.
That's if somebody doesn't murder him, like all the so many people are calling for.
Oh, we've had vigilantism, and we've called for people's heads, and fortunately, it doesn't happen. If I were he, I wouldn't go into a rib joint in the next couple of weeks. Probably not a good idea. He's pretty much persona non grata in the African American community.
If I was him, I'd move to another state and get on disability. That's the only way he's ever going to be safe.
If I was him, I'd move to Norway.
Yeah. Some place that doesn't speak English and understand what the hell went down.
And there's a whole lot of white people.
Yeah. Well, of course.
That's the issue, and and we don't ignore it. And I get upset by this because I spent my time in the '60s demonstrating not so much the war as I did civil rights and voting rights and equal rights for everybody in the United States: man, woman, child, black, yellow, brown, LGBT. I'm this. Great egalitarian or something. That was my thing, and I still think that was a good idea. I still do. We just have to. I mean, there are enough things that come about in life that separates us by your abilities and your not ability. I don't know that everybody's a bum that doesn't have a job like me. I don't think I'm a bum. It's just difficult to get a job that pays properly at the moment for your level of experience, and it's locational for me. I have some issues. I have issues I have to deal with. But we have to, I still am very strong in believing that we have to look at one another as Americans. We have to find some solidarity, some nationality or nationalism, again, that isn't, screw 'em.
Well, it's usually surrounded, when we get patriotic, it usually surrounds an event of some type, maybe a war, maybe a terrorism act. I mean, if you remember after September 11th, there was hardly a person in the country that didn't have a flag pinned to them on their car. Everywhere there could be, there was a flag, right? Yeah.
Nope.
Well,
okay. And I'm not anti-American, folks. Far from it.
Well, I like most of us, this town, obviously where we live.
Oh yeah.
They were everywhere. Actually, in Sacramento, they were everywhere. It was the highest level of patriotism I've ever seen in my life.
Actually, I put the American flag on a T-shirt I was giving away, and spent 2 days to make sure that I was displaying it properly on the sleeve of the shirt.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So the point is that it seems to take an event to make us all come together. And not a situation of a trial, but I'm talking a major event, whatever it may be. I mean, Vietnam obviously solidified an awful lot of people. World War II did. I mean, everybody was a hero.
And somebody brought it up on the radio. 20 kids in an elementary school get shot.
Yeah.
Didn't even cause a ripple. No national legislation. I mean, outrage for a couple of weeks and some finger waving, and the 4 people that died in our hometown from gun violence never even happened.
Well, why can't we just, do what, the great sages Bill S. Preston and Ted Theodore Logan said, is just be excellent to
Hey
one
guys,
another.
we got a call in. Let's see if we can make this work. Hi, you're on with Rob Charney, John Manajastic, and John Charney. Who do we have?
Hello, Heather Charney here.
Hi, Heather Charney. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. So, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I wanted to say that it shouldn't take a major event for us to be patriotic.
You're right. You're right. It shouldn't. But my point
Heather,
was...
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Patriotism is something that you carry around with you everywhere you go all the time.
But it seems to take an event to get us all together, and where it doesn't matter if we're black, white, Hispanic, man, female, whatever. You're all together and you're united, and it takes an event, unfortunately, in this country to seem to be able to do that.
Well, yeah, but there's an event going on that's been going on continually for almost forever, that we've been in a war zone, and we've had soldiers in harm's way to protect. See, sometimes it's hard to be a patriot.
Well, yeah.
Protect what?
We're in a situation. Here we are again. We're back into unnamed wars. They're not really called a war. They're in action. And here we are again, and sticking our noses in places where we shouldn't be. And, why the hell are we still there? I thought Obama, one of the things he ran on was he was going to get us out of Afghanistan.
We're supposed to be out by 14.
Yeah, well, I hope we are.
Well, but the difficult thing, when a president says that, whether it be Obama or whether it be Johnson or it be Nixon, or especially in the modern era, okay, they're saying that, but they're also going back to the fact that it was a president that may have been very instrumental in getting us into the war.
Sure.
Since the Congress hasn't done its constitutional job by declaring war since World War II.
Right. No.
So, I sometimes I am ill affected by presidential war powers and what's happened over the last 40 years, because it's not democratic.
Well, not only
the
that,
chief. He is not the go-to-war-in-chief.
Well, let's call a spade here. I'm ashamed I shouldn't be using that term, but the point is that's why these are actions. These are not wars. This is not a declared war. We're not in a declared war in Afghanistan.
Well, but I understand that. But when you say he can get us out as easily,
it was like
It
was like his pledge to get it, to close down Gitmo, until he finally got in office and went, oh, well, I guess nobody really wants these guys in their backyards, do they? So
no, nobody wants them. But again.
So
I don't know if it was naive. He's trying again to close Gitmo.
I don't know what he's doing. They have a situation now with the hunger strike thing still going on, and
so do we in California.
Yeah, well,
see, I don't think our wars are a police action. I think it's an action for a sphere of influence. I think this comes back to the old core war thing, is what do the other nations look to? I think that's all it's about. I think it's also about, if we go into war with Iran, we have a place that won't get destroyed, like if it was in Israel. I think that's what it's about. I don't think it's a police action. If it is, I think it's a poorly disguised one.
It's a war by any other name.
And trust me, I didn't call it a police action. I called it an action.
That was Korea.
Yeah,
that was Truman's extension of war powers.
Right,
and then it was the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which was the Presidential War Powers Act, and then we've just ratcheted it up from there. The situation is that wars are World War II was the last war that was of any economic benefit to the United States, and it's the last war that we won. and we helped out a lot of the world, and we had a huge impact in the world. We don't fight wars like that. They're not economically beneficial. They're psychologically detrimental to the country because of the number of young and get their heads completely messed with. And now with a professional army, when you can re-up 5 and 6 times to go back into combat, I mean, human beings are not meant to do that. Right. I don't know if we have a warrior class. And then once you do that, how do you fit them back into society? Where's their job?
Well, you're absolutely right. That's a big problem. I mean,
well, you almost have a recidivized and veterans. I mean this with no detriment, but you almost have a criminal. He's been institutionalized outside the country. Very different rules of right and wrong and respect and not respect, and very quid pro quo. If I don't kill that SOB, he's going to kill me. And that is a very tough mindset to be in. But if you're going to come out of a war zone alive, you need to be in it. But then you need to come home.
Yeah.
And that's a huge transition.
It is.
Very much like being in prison for 12 years.
And we're not doing a good job helping these guys come back. Just like the same situation we had with Vietnam. We do a terrible.
We help Vietnam vets more than we're helping our current vets.
Well, hopefully that's changing, because we're seeing more and more now about PSTD and all the situations that these poor fellows have gone through. And I know a number of vets off and on have been there, and everybody reacts differently. I mean, I know some guys that it's no big deal. They're that it's just their job. They go do it and they come back and they do well. And then I know people that they can't handle it at all. So I mean, it's just simple human nature. Some people are designed to be warriors, some are not. And in this volunteer army, you're expected to be a warrior, and you're going to go and do what they want you to do, and that's what it's all about.
You don't go in to be an A&P mechanic, although they use them. But yeah, I mean, when we were drafted into Vietnam or eligible to be, we could have ended up in any MOS.
That's right. That's exactly right.
The fact that you'd end up with a gun, being a grunt, front line, you had a good 50-50 chance of not having to do that. Mm-hmm. Because we had a giant army built on a World War II scale, and the army was self-contained.
Right.
It now is a fighting army.
Yeah. But, back to the question about economics in this situation we're in. So how much does the economics to major defense contractors play out on why we're still where we're at? The drone manufacturers, the ammunition manufacturers, the vehicle manufacturers, the supply line, all in itself, all is making huge money on this. And is that influence part of the reasons why we're still where we are?
Well, but here's part of that deal, and it really even goes back to Eisenhower and beware of the military-industrial complex. Out of World War II, I mean, we got so much technology that went into, refrigeration, nuclear power, and on
Sure.
and on and on and on
Sure.
and on and on. The war industry has always been the major R&D engine in this country.
Right.
It is not doing that at this current point in time. Things are not trickling down with the technologies. I mean, we've already had the conversation. You want drone technology to trickle down into our society?
Yeah. Well,
no, that's not what we want.
But we've got it. And I think it's a little bit different, though, because I think if you look what the major companies are doing and how they're progressing and the technology is growing, it's coming from the little guys. It's coming from the little shops that are, that are inventing things and coming up with new stuff way faster than was ever possible back in Vietnam, especially World War II.
But you have to remember that we are nowhere near the industrial powerhouse with R&D at Ford and R&D at
Right.
Chrysler and R&D at U.S. Steel and ad nauseum. We had companies of large and small size. The best ideas. Los Angeles is the biggest industrial city in the United States, but it's all made up of companies that range between 5 and 200 employees.
It's all small companies.
right?
That's right. That's what it is.
Providing specialized services, providing OEM services, providing all these other things. And, the great invention reservoir is in the United States is OEM. Some little guy invents the xenon headlight fixture that then goes into your Ford, Chevy, Mercury, Toyota, whatever it is.
Right.
And that's why, in a lot of cases, Detroit's in decline, all of Michigan's in decline, and Ohio's going nuts. Because Ohio got a lot of assembly plants. Ohio has a lot of outsourced OEM providers. And so, in many ways, cars in America are made in Ohio. The major industrial plants still are in Michigan because Ohio has cleaned up its blight and its pollution to a huge extent. They just assume that the furnaces and the heavy stuff is over in Detroit.
Yeah.
And we'll make all the,
We'll do the other little cleaner stuff. Heather, are you still with us?
Oh, we chased her a long time.
Did we chase Heather away? Oh.
Some of your best work, too.
Well, we appreciate her calling in, and she's absolutely right. Our patriotism should always be and continuously be.
Well, but
there.
The thing of it is, we don't teach civics, which is like my job. Used to be. If you remember your history teacher, and gosh, somebody posted on your, you're from Santa Monica,
right.
Who was your favorite teacher at John Adams, junior high school that we went to.
Yeah.
I mean, we both have a list an arm long. They were great people. It was we actually went to, our experience was maybe the best ever that there'll be. What was I ranting on? What started that rant?
Well, you're talking about not teaching civics. And
we don't teach civics. We don't
right.
teach people how to be a citizen.
Right.
And one of the things there was Australia just recently had an election. On Saturday and Sunday, most of the civilized countries of the world have their elections on the weekend so everybody can vote. In Australia, it's mandatory to vote. You'll be fined if you don't vote. Here, we're finding ways to exclude people from the basic citizen right in the United States. And I don't think you've got I don't think there are illegals illegally voting that are swaying the election.
How does Australia on their
Voter registration.
the way so they have voter registration,
and they've been taught civics, and that if you're a good Aussie, you're registered to vote and you vote.
Did you do they ask for proof of citizenship?
I doubt it, but they might.
That'll be your assignment for next week. You got to tell me, because that's what I want to understand a little bit.
I'm getting together with a building and a retired building inspector from Canberra, Australia, on Sunday.
Good.
So I'll ask him, eh?
Ask him. Say, hey, mate. Because I'm curious about that, because it still seems to be...
I know they do have voter registration like we do.
Good. Okay.
In California.
But what I want to know, and this is the thing that's still drives me a little bit crazy, is you don't have to prove anything to vote in this country. So literally,
you have to prove that you live in the precinct.
Well, okay, I guess you can come up with a utility bill or something. I'm not even sure that because voter registration.
My registration by way of
by mail.
My license.
Hey, you do voter registration's done by mail. There's no
voter registration is done online and could be done the same day in the last election.
So there is no way of proving, if you're a citizen or not. So literally anybody that's in this country can vote. Doesn't matter if you're a citizen or not.
There are ways of verifying eligibility. They're not as stringent as because of the issue of that we did for many, many years discriminate against voters.
Well, there was a whole situation. I think you and I talked about this. Yes, exactly. The literacy test. I remember specifically, and I think I shared that in another story, going with my father when he registered to vote. He had to read a paragraph. You had to prove you were literate. You had to produce your legal ID, and it was always
Santa Monica?
Yeah, in Santa Monica. Literally, you had to prove your literacy. You don't remember that, but I remember it specifically as a kid.
The people outside the supermarket don't ask to.
They don't care about anything anymore. That's why it all changed. And you know what? I don't know that proving you're literate or not makes any sense, but it was the way it was.
You most certainly be Australian, British, Canadian, and on and on and on and on, and be able to probably pass the literacy part.
Well, again, ask your Australian buddy.
Well, wouldn't
give us some details?
Well, I have
ostensibly, this was an issue with Obama, and still with some people. As long as you have a birth certificate, you're in. And I don't know that you don't have to provide a birth certificate.
You don't have
some
to provide
places not.
Nothing. Okay, if you want a Social Security number, a legitimate Social Security number, you have to provide a birth certificate. Okay, that's that's required. But
actually, anymore you do not.
You don't have to what?
Now, if I needed to get a new Social Security card, I could use my passport that I had that was obtained with my birth certificate.
Yeah, okay, but you still have to show up with something that is you.
Then again, technically, on your first driver's license, I think we took our birth certificates.
I believe you're right. It's a long time ago, but I think you're right. I think we had to take our birth certificates, but none of that's needed anymore. I mean,
because technically they have it on file now.
Well, I guess they do, but remember, I still have my original Social Security card, and it says on there specifically not to be used for ID.
Absolutely not.
Okay, except and now everything's tied to your Social Security number.
Everything. Well, your military ID number is your Social Security card number.
Yeah.
Started that in Vietnam.
Yeah. I know.
Used to be a different number.
Anyway, that's our little tirade for the time here. Hey, you know what? We have almost hit that 1 hour mark. I'm sorry.
It's like click and clack that's happened, brother.
That's right.
We wasted another hour.
We wasted another hour, but, we had a few people that listened to us. We've only got 4 online right now, but, hey, thank you to that 4. Hey, don't forget to donate. One more thing I want to thank.
Each one of you and $1 from me, which is $7. It's lucky 7.
We need all we can get. One more, this quick shout-out to Cal.net providing the wireless internet connections that we got going now. It looks like we got the bugs worked out and everything's going good. So good on Calnet. And John Lane, the CEO over there, thank you very much for helping. We could use a little more help, of course. Never get enough. But I'd like to see. Our goal is to keep doing this for at least a few more years. But we need some money, so thanks for that. Hey, John, thank you very much for joining me on this. We'll do it again next week.
Next week, 4:00 Wednesday here.
Next week, 4:00 Wednesday here. Let's find some other topics. And Jonathan Charney, Heather Charney, everybody else that joined in. Thank you very much. This is Rob with Old Guy Tech TV News 44. We'll see you next time.